Hey everybody, Brent here with Nutrition First Coaching. So Melanie had a really interesting question this week, and she wanted to know more about ketosis and running. So we're going to talk a little keto and running, and a few thoughts on keto in general. This could be kind of long, so I'll try to keep it short. Really interesting researching this a little bit more, seeing what the latest info was, and let's go over what keto is to start with, and that's roughly less than 50 grams of carbohydrates per day. Now, this kind of depends on your size and your tolerance to carbohydrates in general. So, it really requires testing yourself and seeing if you're in ketosis and how long it takes you to get there. And there are ways to get into ketosis faster by exercising and kind of burning off your glycogen stores. And then you can take in exogenous ketones and try to get yourself into ketosis. I think another way to look at it is if you look at your total daily energy intake, 75 to 80% of that is going to be fat and 15 to 20% is going to be protein, and what's left is going to be carbohydrates. So we're taking that one macronutrient and we're basically not really ingesting it at all, and we're forcing our body to function on ketones, which is not a preferred fuel source for the body. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but takes a little bit longer for our body to process, but can be really beneficial in terms of how our body utilizes it, especially when we're in low aerobic states. So if we're looking at a low carb, high fat diet, we're going to call that our ketosis, our keto diet. It can be beneficial at below 70% of VO2 max. So the only way to know this, again, is to be individually know what your VO2 max is and when you're at that kind of threshold point. And this is how well your body can metabolize fat up to this point and give you energy. This could be long, slow distance running, hiking, even like more aggressive hiking to walking, depending on the elevation you're at. But when you're picking it up and you're going up above 70%, all the studies show that at that point you really need carbohydrate to perform better. And this is based on multiple studies talking about these are pretty well-trained runners and even speed walkers, distance racers, and how carbohydrate becomes more beneficial above 70% of the VO2 max to generate more energy, kind of that quick energy. And carbohydrates are really the preferred source at that point for your body to get energy and how the energy systems work. So the reason for that is fat, it has reduced economy. It requires 8% more oxygen to process fat and turn it into fuel because of how it runs through the Krebs cycle and how it works in the body than it does for carbohydrates. So you have just reduced economy in general when you're just burning fat. There's a little bit more of an oxygen requirement, and that can make you less efficient long run. I want to say this in the middle because this is all based on the person's physiology, how fat adapted the person is, which a lot of the studies I looked at said that can take upwards of 6 months to a year to really know your full fat adaptation. So kind of take the physiology part with a little bit of grain of salt depending on who you are. And really all this stuff requires experimentation and just seeing how you feel. Now physiologically it's limiting because fat really just has this one pathway that it can go through to be metabolized and used for energy, whereas carbohydrates have multiple pathways and they can do it much quicker, but also recycle some of the components. This comes down to carbohydrates being used with lactic acid, and this can be recycled and used for energy again. So there's kind of multiple backing systems with carbohydrates that can make it a lot more beneficial when you're working harder and you need energy quicker. So the thing I would throw in with that is even if you're a distance racer and you're running half marathons or marathons, there are always kind of peaks and valleys in your effort, and you're always going to have times where you go above 70% of your VO2 max. And that's just kind of how races work. There might be a little hill, it might be slowing down at a rest station, then you pick it up because you feel good for a while and you want to pass somebody. I mean, there's always these kind of cycles of increased effort depending on what you're doing, even in long distance racing. So what I would say with all of this as well is, what is your goal when it comes to running or cycling? What is your goal when it comes to body composition? And kind of weigh those two goals together, because if it's performance, then ketosis isn't really the most beneficial for performance. Really anything, even half marathon, marathon, super ultra stuff, performance is not really supported that well when you're in ketosis, or you're trying to just burn fat for those kind of fuel sources. Let's talk just generally about ketosis and keto diet. Now, it's really proven too that when you go into ketosis or you go on a keto diet, you start to lose weight because you're really going into a calorie restriction. You're taking one whole macronutrient, and there's only 3 of them, and you're restricting that significantly. So you have less choices. People start to pay more attention to what they're eating. There's a lot more awareness around food. They're seeing how much is in certain foods, and they're seeing how much they need to eat to try to, roughly be in this zone, this fat burning zone, and be in ketosis. I also think another big reason for this too is our bodies retain water with glycogen. So the more glycogen we have in our muscles, then the more we're going to retain water with that. So we're going to generally be just more hydrated. That's going to kind of be that effect, right? When you try to go into ketosis, that you shed a bunch of water, so to speak, and you might lose 6 or 8 or 10 pounds in the first week. And you're like, man, this is amazing. I'm going to lose so much weight. Well, you can't really lose fat that quickly, not naturally. And that's where you're going to lose weight initially, and then that's going to top off, and then staying in ketosis becomes the big challenge long term. You're going to feel uncomfortable in the first week to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. This can require a little bit of supplementation with some electrolytes that can make it much more comfortable. Even a little exogenous ketone supplementation will help try to get you into ketosis, or you can exercise yourself into a little bit of glycogen depletion. Then you can try to get into ketosis a little quicker. But in general, if you're a runner and your goals are leaning more towards performance versus just weight loss, and you don't have that much weight to lose, then I would say the best practice is what I call cyclical ketosis, where you might go into ketosis for short amounts of time. This could be cycling it through the week, where you're in ketosis if you're not exercising, and when you do exercise, you take in some carbohydrates, and you can have more carbohydrates on those days and tolerate more carbohydrates around your workouts. You can maybe even get into, in an N of 1 of myself, going into ketosis and being able to test it with ketone strips, and that's a blood testing, which is way more accurate than the urine or breath testing. I was able to get myself into ketosis really quickly through exercise and through a little bit of exogenous supplementation and MCT oils. And once I was in that ketosis state, I could even tolerate like up to 100 or 120 grams of carbohydrates, depending on how much I was exercising. So your body could basically just burn that off, and then you could stay in ketosis when you weren't exercising because you planned those carbs right around your workout. So that can become something you play with a little bit more, and that gets a little bit more down the road into the science and the testing part of it. But if you can cycle through it on a weekly basis, or maybe even a monthly basis, come out of ketosis for a little bit, have some more carbs, let your body kind of recover from it, then go back into ketosis. And for the most part, you're getting most of your carbs from vegetable sources and very little fruit and you're staying away from all the processed junk food, so to speak, that's where I think ketosis can be a really healthy practice for people. It'll help you lose body fat. It'll help you become a more metabolically adapted person and athlete, able to burn fats for fuel, able to burn carbohydrates for fuel if necessary. And this cyclical ketosis can really be a lifestyle long-term versus just trying to stay in ketosis for months or even years, where your body can kind of get blunted to those effects, and it makes it really challenging to stay in ketosis. So, sorry, I know this was a long one. Thanks for sticking and hanging in there with me. Like and subscribe to us if you can. Pretty easy, just click the little button down there. More questions are appreciated. I love researching this stuff. I hope you got some value out of it, and have a great week.